The Horror of Hammer.
In the late 50s, the British scary movie came of age, thanks to Hammer Studios. They would create a new breed of horror thanks once again to a major technological breakthrough.
Hammer had one thing that Universal didn't, and that was colour.
They took full advantage of it. Buckets of blood flowed across the screen. They gloried in it, and the audiences reacted.
Blood from the mummy's tomb was typical of Hammer's gratuitous application of blood on anything that moved. Never before seen in glorious Technicolor or in such vast quantities, it was guaranteed to raise a scream.
They were the pictures that introduced the explicitness that now is common.
It was a challenge to young British kids. Can you withstand the shock? People couldn't resist.
Hammer's new formula was a huge hit, and so they went horror crazy, constantly revamping the vampire with more blood than anyone ever deemed possible. But the blood was beginning to run thin.
Dracula had risen from the grave, he'd risen from the subway, he'd risen a lot. And I think they were kind of maybe running out of audience too. I think that they had to come up with something a little fresh.
And the result was The Vampire Lovers, which was the standard Hammer vampire picture with tits and lesbians and gore and you name it.
And playing the lead role was none other than 60s screen siren Ingrid Pitt.
My dearest Laura.
Here she tenderly embraces a potential victim and gives the audience a sense of the high-concept plotline.
All characters are bitten on the breast. I don't know why, but that's why they do it, although I myself do it on the neck.
Anytime the vampire gets to anybody, it's like, oh, I've been bitten, look! And out comes a breast. It's Dracula or a titmouse. I'm not sure which.
And we wondered where the horror film was going.
The monster movie would find its new home in the social chaos of late 1960s America. Here, real-life terror far outshone strange goings-on in Transylvania.
Late 1960s America is a time of great trauma and great turmoil. You have students protesting in the streets and being shot at. You have Nixon and all of that corruption and scandal. Most importantly, the civil rights movement. Somehow things are going a bit wild. They don't know quite what to do about it. Night of the Living Dead encapsulates those fears absolutely perfectly.
Zombie Nation.
In 1968, independent filmmaker George Romero would unleash Night of the Living Dead, a chilling tale of a nation under siege by an army of undead killing machines.
Night of the Living Dead really started the modern zombie. There is no other modern movie monster like the zombie, and Romero created all of that.
What was so frightening to me was the relentlessness, the unthinking relentlessness, and the fact that their sole goal was death to the living. Here we have this little group of people caught in a home. Each one is uniquely different, trying his best to survive.
Confused by what appears to be a society rampaging out of control, our band of survivors clutch desperately to the scant information filtering through the airwaves.
It's on, it's on. There's no sound.
The fact that the TV was coming in and out, the radio was coming in and out, the audience learned as much information as the character learned.
And as recent events have shown, that when catastrophes happen, you don't find out all the details immediately.
Romero's able to put you in that house with those characters, where nobody knows what the hell's going on, it's completely chaotic, and every bit of information that they're getting out of the television, you're starving for that.
A widespread investigation of reports from funeral homes, morgues, and hospitals has concluded that the unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims.
When they know they're surrounded by zombies, they've heard that the dead are returning to life, and it's the empathy you get with them thinking, geez, you know, how would I react if I knew that the world was coming to an end?
And as the zombie hordes begin to slaughter the survivors, American audiences would witness the most taboo-breaking murder ever to hit their screens, when a zombie child eats her father and then butchers her own mother.
that soul is connected to yours because you're family. When you see that the soul doesn't care, kills you anyway, there couldn't be anything more horrific, I think, than that.
And with Dawn would come the film's final brutal twist. The lone survivor, the black male lead, is pointlessly gunned down by the American National Guard.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes.
At that time of civil unrest in the United States, having that kind of like racial tension going on as well was a very sort of, you know, explosive sort of subject matter, really.
To have him die, and then to have him be so brutally handled at the very end with the meat hooks, led to the extreme horror of the film.
By the early 1980s, the zombie had become a familiar staple of monster movies. And so to continue to scare, they were becoming increasingly gory and violent. Evil Dead delivered both by the bucket load.
First Evil Dead was like balls out, no holds barred, penciled in the Achilles tendon, heads lopped off, spewing blood.
So inevitably, Evil Dead suffered public vilification and worldwide bans. The scary movie was about to cross the line.
Evil Dead was probably the scariest experience I'd ever had watching a movie.
There are some certain scenes in that movie that stay with you forever.
7 of hearts, you're right. Hey, Ash, I guessed the card right.
Yeah, truly amazing, Linda.
Evil Dead followed the familiar premise of the modern monster movie. 5 teenagers stuck in an isolated log cabin where, one by one, they would turn into blood-crazed psychopathic zombies. However, the ferocity of this film truly set it apart from its peers.
8 of spades, 2 spades, jack of diamonds, jack of clubs.
All sorts of hell breaks loose. People die in terrible, terrible ways. People hack up their own girlfriends.
But hacking up girlfriends was just the beginning of Evil Dead's orgy of comic book violence.
It's a challenge to kill people in different ways in horror films, definitely.
But Evil Dead would meet the challenge in spectacular fashion, upping the ante on the Night of the Living Dead trowel murder and going for the garden tool granddaddy, the spade.
It's like the best episode of Scooby-Doo ever made. It really is like an episode of Scooby-Doo, but with gore and shocks and tree rape.
Yes, tree rape. Evil Dead's barrage of violence would cross the line in suitably bizarre fashion, as Cheryl gets raped by a tree possessed of evil spirits.
I was so mortified when I first saw the film and saw that scene. I just wanted to crawl away.
It's just basically looking at abuse and not really exploring anything much more than that.
But amazingly, more controversial than sexual abuse by an out-of-control conifer was this scene involving an HB pencil, a bottle of ketchup, and a rubber leg.
This was poop, yeah, this is working it around.
I feel that to this day. Every time I think of that, I go...
Incredibly, on its release to video, this colourful selection box of sadistic torture, mutilation and death was deemed hugely offensive by the British press. And never one to make a scene, the British censor agreed.
It's so good-natured, that film. That's what's so weird about it being held up as this kind of dreadful text.
There's such an overlaying comedy on that nobody recognizes.
Protesting against the ban, London studio Palace Pictures and director Sam Raimi went before the British courts.
He had practiced this whole speech, and the judge was like, I don't need to hear from you. Anyway, onward with the case. And they won, Palace Pictures won, and of course that just sold all the more video units, because they went, what is this video nasty? I've got to see this video nasty.
Evil Dead became the biggest-selling video in Britain of 1983, as bloodthirsty Brits revelled in scenes that Hammer could only have dreamt of.
Can you ever have too much blood in a horror film? Well, apparently not.
You say there can't be any more blood in this movie, and then they get it again.
It's a gory movie.